Greg Estow with Virginia Department of Forestry. I'm a senior area forester here in Tazewell County, as well as covering a few other counties. We're just going to talk about some water quality in forests today. So the definition of forestry, there are lots of different definitions, but kind of a forester's definition is it's the art and science of managing trees to meet the needs of the landowner. That can vary from timber production to wildlife habitat to a combination. Alright, so we're going to look at forests and water quality today. One of the big jobs that Virginia Department of Forestry does is look at logging jobs or timber harvesting jobs, and you can see a little bit of this background here. This area was actually harvested a few years ago. The main thing that we're out there looking for and trying to help prevent are water quality problems, because we like to have clean water, like in this bottle, rather than this. And so why do we care about clean water anyway? So there's a number of things you can think about. We can start to look at it as, if you go down to the creek, do you like to play in the water and have mud up to your ankles or even your knees as you're trying to get in there and play around? Most people don't. You'd rather be playing in that nice clean water and hopping on rocks. We have mussels in some of our streams and rivers around here, and those mussels need to have gravel or rock to be on as well as clean water. And then you have species of fish like trout, lots of other critters too, but trout need to be able to lay their eggs in a gravel bed. And if we have dirty water, you can see a little bit on the bottom of the bottle here, you get mud on the bottom of that creek or river, and then we have issues there, and those trout, they can't lay their eggs, or their eggs won't survive. We can think about this a different way too. So who likes to sit by a campfire? Most people like to sit by a campfire, but do you like it when the wind turns a little bit and puts that smoke up in your eyes? Most people start burning and itching and their eyes start to water. It doesn't feel very good. Well, think about it from a fish's perspective, or any other animal that's living in the water, and you have this dirty brown water flowing against your face all the time. It's sort of like having smoke in your eyes. Okay, so those are just a couple reasons why we want to keep our water and our streams clean. So with dirty water, like here in our example, that's sediment down in there, what we call it, which is just dirt. It's just moved dirt or in the waterway here. And so how does that dirt move? We call it erosion. That just means the movement of soil, or it's misplaced soil. Okay, once it's out of its normal place, then we just usually call it dirt. Just a distinction there between soil and dirt. So what we're trying to do is keep that sediment in its place, keep that dirt in its place, and prevent erosion. So when we're talking about a logging job, and we're going to look down at my little mini logging job example here in just a minute. Now, I brought a couple things. This is my log skidder. Doesn't quite look like a log skidder, but you know, it's made out of wood. It's bringing logs out of the woods. And I have my bulldozer here. Okay, so we're going to see some examples in how we prevent sediment from moving off of our site and getting into our waterways and making them all dirty. But just a little bit before we get to that, we got to talk about some of the other aspects of a forest and how a forest is beneficial or acts like a sponge to help prevent some sediment and erosion problems. So forests can be looked at as a sponge. Now, it'd be kind of ugly if it was this yellow sponge here, but what I mean by that is that when it rains and comes down, we have this nice litter layer on the ground, which helps the rain soak into the ground. Okay, and when that rain soaks into the ground, then the water moves slowly through the ground rather than running across the top of the ground quickly and getting down to the stream. So like a sponge, the forest floor kind of soaks up that water and then slowly releases it. Another way that a forest is like a sponge is it's like a filter. So if I take my dirty water here and I pour it on the sponge, of course some of it's going to go through, but you see it hasn't even gone through yet. And if I get closer here, you can see that I have some little pieces. Now it's starting to go through. If I get down to where there are a bunch of pieces, you can see that my sponge catches a bunch of those pieces on top, and so the water that came through is much cleaner. Alright, since we have clear sunny skies today, I brought my rain with me in my water bucket here for our little logging example, but I wanted to show you a picture of a raindrop. When rain hits bare soil, it splashes, and you can see this kind of crown as that raindrop splashes back up. When it hits bare soil, there are small pieces of sediment that are actually picked up by the rain and now started to move. And that's the beginning of erosion. But see where we're going to be on our little example here, we have one bare soil site where this can start to happen, and one site that's covered with leaves. The leaves protect that soil so that we don't start that erosion process. Alright, so for our little logging simulation here, first we're going to have some rain just on our soil. So we've got a forest floor with leaves on it, and a bare soil that somebody has already worked on, run over with the bulldozer, maybe bladed off, and so all the leaves are already gone. We're just going to have a little rain event, and you might see some erosion off of both of these sites. There's always some baseline erosion, but let's just do a quick comparison. So it's raining on our forested site here. Do you see anything coming out on the whiteboard? So nothing yet. Maybe there's just a little bit coming out. We're on a slope, so it's going the other way. A little bit dirty, but not too bad. And then we make it rain on our bare soil site, and what do you have? You can see quite a bit of dirt moving across the top and then coming down on that whiteboard there. But what we're going to do is more like a real logging job. This is kind of loose soil that has been sitting here for a little bit. But now we're going to take our skidder, and so what a skidder does is go up into the woods and get the trees that are cut down and drag them back down to where they can be loaded on a truck. So this is going to be our main trail, and we're going to go up here, we're going to get our trees, and we're going to come on back. And we're going to use this same trail up and down the hill. Now this is not a very good way to log. This causes some issues, but it happens sometimes. So we're looking at this. We should be going back and forth as we're going up a hill, but we're going to be trying to be quick and fast, and so we're just going up and down it. And what have I created here? I've created a rut. Okay, and I've also smashed down all this soil here. So when it rains this time, do you think anything different's going to happen? We take our rain, we have our rain coming down, and you can see how it channelizes and funnels straight down that rut. And there's a whole lot more erosion and sediment coming off of this site right now. Okay, this is what we want to prevent while we're out there looking at logging jobs and helping loggers take care of the woods. So what can we do to prevent this problem here? Okay, now there are some things we could have done. Moved our skid trail around so it didn't go straight up and down the hill. So what are some ways we can fix this is really what we're looking at now that it's happened. Alright, so we want to get our bulldozer here, my handy dandy shovel bulldozer, which if it's small you can use a shovel, but if it's big you're going to need a bigger piece of equipment. And what we want to do, now this depends on if we need to use this skid trail again. We might just be doing this temporarily, or we might be closing this logging job. So first we're just going to do it temporarily. What we want to do is move some dirt around and what we call a water bar. Now you'd want to make a bunch of water bars on the whole hillside, but of course we only have a little example. And now when it rains, where's that water going to go? It's going to turn out on that water bar, and then it's going to go into my forest floor, my undisturbed forest floor. It's going to go through my leaves. Okay, and that's really going to help because those leaves are going to capture some of that sediment just like our sponge example did earlier. Now that the operator out here is finished using this skid trail, they already have this temporary water bar. They put it in at night in case it was raining. We're gonna go back and close out this area. So we already talked about a forest floor is a really good sponge and helps trap the sediment and stuff. It's not very practical to go out and gather leaves to try and cover this soil up. But what we can do is establish some vegetation. So we're gonna put out some seed. Now, you normally wouldn't use corn seed mixed in with your wheat, but that just happens to be what I had on hand. So we put some seed out there, and then we put some straw on top, we call it mulch. The mulch both helps reduce raindrop impact, but it also helps hold moisture so that these seeds, when they germinate, actually have a chance to grow. Without it, most of the time the seeds will germinate if the birds don't eat them, and then they'll dry up really quickly and they don't grow very well. So the mulch really helps here. And we can see even with just that cover, now when it rains on top, we're gonna have less of an impact. We're gonna have less sediment coming off. So in our forest floor here, we have some things missing. So we're gonna pull back our forest floor just to see. And so this is just leaves on top of bare soil, just for our quick simulation example. But in a real forest floor, you'd have a humus layer, which is a thick or a thin, but very rich black humus layer. And then underneath that and within that, you'd have roots. But you can see this is just loose soil and I don't have the roots. So we're actually missing a lot of things that help hold that soil in place when the water's going over it. But even just with this cover on top, or the mulch cover on top, we are still benefiting and keeping that sediment in place. So just to wrap things up here, forests are a great sponge. Forests are a great filter. They really help keep our water clean and our soil in place. Actually, when you compare forests to pastures to cropland, forests are the best at keeping water clean. Have a great day.